I hope you like this premiere. This one today is going to be over groupthink. All the links will be in the description for where I got all of this information. So, groupthink is a psychological phenomenon that occurs within a group of people in which the desire for harmony or conformity in the group results in an irrational or dysfunctional decision making outcome. Cohesiveness, or the desire for cohesiveness, in a group may produce a tendency among its members to agree at all costs. This causes the group to minimize conflict and reach a consensus decision without critical evaluation. Groupthink is a construct of social psychology but has an extensive reach and influences literature in the fields of communication studies, political science, management, and organizational theory, as well as important aspects of deviant religious cult behavior. Groupthink is sometimes stated to occur within natural groups within the community. For example, to explain the lifelong different mindsets of those with differing political views, such as conservatism and liberalism, in the U.S. political context, or the purported benefits of teamwork versus work conducted in solitude. However, this conformity of viewpoints within a group does not mainly involve deliberate group decision making and might be better explained by the collective confirmation bias of the individual members of the group. Groupthink requires individuals to avoid raising controversial issues or alternative solutions, and there is a loss of individual creativity, uniqueness, and independent thinking. The dysfunctional group dynamics of the in group produces an illusion of invulnerability, an inflated certainty that the right decision has been made. Thus, the in group significantly overrates its own abilities in decision making and significantly underrates the abilities of its opponents, the outgroup, or the outer members of the group. Furthermore, groupthink can produce dehumanizing actions against the outgroup. Members of a group can often feel under peer pressure to go along with the crowd for fear of rocking the boat or of how their speaking out will be perceived by the rest of the group. Group interactions tend to favor clear and harmonious agreements, and it can be a cause for concern when little to no new innovations or arguments for better policies, outcomes, and structures are called to question. Groupthink can often be referred to as a group of yes men because group activities and group projects in general make it extremely easy to pass on, not offering constructive opinions. Some methods that have been used to counteract groupthink in the past is selecting teams from more diverse backgrounds and even mixing men and women for groups. Groupthink can be considered by many to be a detriment to companies, organizations, and in any work situations. Most positions that are senior level need individuals to be independent in their thinking. There is a positive correlation found between outstanding executives and decisiveness. Groupthink also prohibits an organization from moving forward and innovating if no one ever speaks up and says something could be done differently. Antecedent, a thing or event that existed before or logically precedes another. Antecedent factors such as group cohesiveness, the quality of forming a united whole, faulty group structure, and situational context, example, community panic, play into the likelihood of whether or not groupthink will impact the decision-making process. From Groupthink by William H. White, Jr. in Fortune magazine, March 1952. William H. White, Jr. derived the term from George Orwell's 1984 and popularized it in 1952 in Fortune magazine. Groupthink being a coinage and admittedly a loaded one. A working definition is in order. We are not talking about mere instinctive conformity. It is, after all, a perennial failing of mankind. What we are talking about is a rationalized conformity, an open, articulate philosophy which holds that that group's values are not only expedient but right and good as well. Groupthink was White's diagnosis of the malaise, a general feeling of discomfort, illness, or uneasiness, whose exact cause is difficult to identify, affecting both the study and practice of management, and, by association, America in the 1950s. White was dismayed that employees had subjugated themselves to the tyranny of groups, which crushed individuality and were instinctively hostile to anything or anyone that challenged the collective view. American psychologist Irving Janis from Yale University pioneered the initial research on the groupthink theory. He does not cite White, but coined the term again by analogy with doublethink and similar terms that were part of the newspeak vocabulary in the novel 1984 by George Orwell. He initially defined groupthink as follows. I use the term groupthink as a quick and easy way to refer to the mode of thinking that persons engage in when concurrence seeking becomes so dominant in a cohesive in-group that it tends to override realistic appraisal of an alternative courses of action. Groupthink is a term of the same order as the words in the newspeak vocabulary George Orwell used in his dismaying world of 1984. In that context, groupthink takes on invidious, likely to arouse or incur resentment or anger in others, connotation, an idea or feeling that a word invokes in addition to its literal or primary meaning. Exactly such a connotation is intended, since the term refers to a deterioration in mental efficiency, reality testing, and moral judgments as a result of group pressures. He went on to write, the main principle of groupthink, which I offer in the spirit of Parkinson's law, is this. The more amiability, the quality of having a friendly and pleasant manner, geniality, and esprit de corps, a feeling of pride, fellowship, and common loyalty shared by the members of a particular group. There is among the members of a policy-making in-group. The greater the danger that independent critical thinking will be replaced by groupthink, which is likely to result in irrational and dehumanizing actions directed against outgroups. Janis set the foundation for the study of groupthink, starting with his research in the American Soldier Project, where he studied the effect of extreme stress on group cohesiveness. After the study, he remained interested in the ways in which people make decisions under external threats. This interest led Janis to study a number of disasters in American foreign policy, such as failure to anticipate the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, or the Bay of Pigs invasion fiasco in 1961, and the prosecution of the Vietnam War, 1964 through 1967, by President Lyndon Johnson. He concluded that in each of these cases, the decisions occurred largely because of groupthink, which prevented contradictory views from being expressed and subsequently evaluated. After the publication of Janis's book, Victims of Groupthink, in 1972, and a revised edition with the title Groupthink, Psychological Studies of Policy Decisions and Fiascos in 1982, the concept of groupthink was used to explain many other faulty decisions in history. These events included Nazi Germany's decision to invade the Soviet Union in 1941, the Watergate scandal, and others. Despite the popularity of the concept of groupthink, fewer than 24 studies address the phenomenon itself, following the publication of Victims of Groupthink between the years 1972 and 1998. This was surprising considering how many fields of interest it spans, which include political science, communications, organizational studies, social psychology, management, strategy, counseling, and marketing. One can most likely explain this lack of follow up in that group research is difficult to conduct. Groupthink has many independent and dependent variables, and it is unclear how to translate groupthink's theoretical concepts into observable and quantitative constructs. Nevertheless, outside research psychology and sociology, wider culture has come to detect groupthink in observable situations. For example, critics of Twitter point to the predominance of the hive mind in such social media, the kind of groupthink that submerges independent thinking in favor of conformity to the group, the collective. Hive mind, the collective thoughts, ideas, and opinions of a group of people, such as internet users, regarded as functioning together as a single mind. What is a hive mind mentality? Hive mentality, also known as groupthink, is when a person has a strong tendency to fall for group decision making. If someone has a hive mentality, they may feel invulnerable and morally correct when they're part of a certain group. Leaders often have beliefs which are very far from matching reality and which can become more extreme as they are encouraged by their followers. The predilection of many cult leaders for abstract, ambiguous, and therefore unchallengeable ideas can further reduce the likelihood of reality testing, while the intense milieu control exerted by cults over their members means that most of the reality available for testing is supplied by the group environment. Milieu control is a term popularized by psychiatrist Robert J. Lifton to describe tactics that control environment and human communication through the use of social pressure and group language. Such tactics may include dogma, protocols, innuendo, slang, and pronunciation, which enables group members to identify other members or to promote cognitive changes in individuals. Lifton originally used milieu control to describe brainwashing and mind control, but the term has since been applied to other contexts. Milieu control involves the control of communication within a group environment that also may or may not result in a significant degree of isolation from surrounding society. When non-group members or outsiders are considered or potentially labeled as less valuable, without basis for stated group supported and group reinforced prejudice, group members may have a tendency to then consider themselves as intellectually superior, which can limit alternate points of view, thus becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy in which group members automatically begin to devalue others and the intellect of others that are separate from their group, without logical rationale for doing so. Additionally, milieu control includes other techniques to restrict members' contact with the outside world and to be able to make critical, rational judgments about information, controlling information from the outer group. Groupthink by compulsion. Groupthink at least implies voluntarism. When this fails, the organization is not above outright intimidation. In a nationwide telecommunications company, refusal by the new hires to cheer on command incurred consequences not unlike the indoctrination and brainwashing techniques associated with the Soviet-era gulag. Mob mentality, herd or hive mentality. Also called herd or hive mentality, is the inclination that some humans have to be a part of the large group, often neglecting their individual feelings in the process and adopting the behaviors and actions of the people around them. The term is used to describe how humans blindly follow the crowd and take on different manners, follow trends, and buy merchandise based on their circle of influence. The concept of mob mentality was first introduced by social psychologists and groupthink pioneers Gabriel Tard and Gustave Le Bon in the 1800s. Gabriel Tard was a French sociologist, criminologist, and social psychologist who conceived sociology as based on small psychological interactions among individuals, much as if it were chemistry. The fundamental forces being imitation and innovation. Charles Marie Gustave Le Bon was a leading French polymath whose areas of interest included anthropology, psychology, sociology, medicine, invention, and physics. He is best known for his 1895 work, The Crowd, a study of the popular mind, which is considered one of the seminal works of crowd psychology. In a groupthink scenario, consensus is often derived by social pressures or by workflow processes that cannot accommodate change. Group thinking, which carries a negative connotation, can be contrasted with collaboration, a scenario in which individual group members are encouraged to be creative, speak out, and weigh many options before arriving at a consensus. How mob mentality works. Being part of a group can cause a person to lose their self awareness or experience de individuation. When people de individuate, they become less likely to follow normal social restrictions and more likely to lose their sense of an individual identity. This can lead to the destruction of a person's natural inhibitions, causing them to perform an activity they would never normally do. Their individual values and principles have been replaced by those of the group. Furthermore, being a part of a large group can make people feel invisible and therefore invincible. In other words, a person's fear of repercussion is reduced. People believe they will not be detected or held accountable for their actions as long as they exist under the shield of the group. While everyone is vulnerable to mob mentality, there are certain situations that may make it more likely to occur. For example, adolescents with shared antisocial tendencies and a lack of family bonds are more likely to join gangs as they search for their social identity. Also, looting is more likely to occur in dire situations when resources are limited, such as in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Mob mentality can be hard to sustain, but the influence of peer pressure and the fear of rejection often prohibits most members from speaking up and dissenting the group's activities, thus allowing mob mentality to survive. The issues and drawbacks of mob mentality. Mob mentality arises from a natural desire to fit in. However, as has been mentioned, this often depletes an individual's personal decision making skills. It becomes more challenging to evaluate and stand by personal beliefs when they contrast with what others are doing. This disregard for personal opinions and fear of dissenting is one major issue with mob mentality. In a reasonable discussion, disagreeing viewpoints are considered with respect and the reasons behind the conflicting ideas are discussed. However, in mob mentality, contrasting voices are frequently silenced, either through mockery or the individual's fear of speaking up. This immediately stops individual thought and reveals to the other group members that disagreements are not welcome. This peer pressure leads to a consensus decision that may not have everyone's best interests in mind. A lack of human decency can also be found in mob mentality. When alone, individuals are unlikely to be open about or express racist, abusive, destructive opinions or other harmful traits. However, when introduced to mob mentality, these hateful characteristics become more common. Even if something begins as a peaceful protest, it can easily turn into a violent outburst with looting and willful destruction as individuals become more concerned with following everyone else and are no longer willing to make their own decisions. Notable examples of mob mentality. Mob mentality arises naturally. It can be seen in the herding and grazing of animals and in groups of humans. The principle is induced and manipulated by advertisers, political leaders, social influencers through social media, and individuals in order to gain and protect their social influence. Financial analysts observe the effects of mob mentality when masses of investors behave emotionally and rationally together. For example, investors may all rush to buy one stock because somebody says it is hot. The Salem witch trials between 1692 and 1693 are one of the greatest examples of mob mentality. Hysteria started in the small colonial Massachusetts town after a group of young girls claimed to be possessed by the devil, accusing several local women of witchcraft. Other villagers quickly adopted the fear, and the accusations of witchcraft grew, resulting in the unfair imprisonment and trial of over 200 people. In the end, 30 people were found guilty of witchcraft. 19 were executed by hanging, and 7 died while in jail. A more common example of mob mentality can be seen at sporting events, where attendees frequently adopt the collective moods and actions of the sports fans around them. Game day and conditions, such as weather and alcohol availability, can enhance the mob mentality further, making it more likely for the group to carry out extreme activities, like charging onto the field or major outbursts when the referee makes a disagreeable call. How to avoid mob mentality. There are a few simple ways to avoid getting pulled into a mob mentality. First, take time to think through responses and actions before making them. It's best not to engage when feeling stressed, pressured, or disconnected. Second, always be sure to research before forming an opinion and be open to new information that emerges. This will help individuals form their own thoughts and ideas rather than copying those of their peers. Third, find comfort in being unique and develop the courage to stand out from the crowd. This includes speaking out against bullies and others that are causing harm. Thank you all for joining me today. I really liked putting this information together. I feel like it answered a lot of questions for a lot of behaviors that I've been through recently or in the past found myself involved in. I think we all get caught up in a mob mentality, hive mind, groupthink, more than we realize. And I hope today putting this information out will help you be able to not be susceptible to mob mentality.